Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Sanchez, you played an instrumental role in drafting and implementing Proposition 57. You were an advisor to Governor Brown. You were an author of the bill, and you helped craft and coordinate messaging in favor of the measure. Opponents of Proposition 57 at the time warned that you and other authors were not telling the truth. Were not being candid about the effect of that proposition. They said it would apply to violent criminals, such as rapists when their victim is drugged, to human sex traffickers, to those who committed hate crimes, and to others whom the average person would not consider nonviolent. At the time of the drafting, was your intent to make those individuals eligible for parole?
Well, thank you, Senator, for that question. As I said before, as I mentioned earlier, the law itself did not automatically release any individual. It only provided parole consideration for nonviolent offenders and a sentencing a system of sentencing credits for rehabilitative programs. The Proposition 57 and the implementing regulations did not define who was a violent or a nonviolent offender. That was made by reference to existing California Penal Code. And the intent in the passage of that law was to allow those parole consideration in order to comply with the federal court order that California reduce its prison population to a constitutionally tolerable level.
Okay, so let me try again on that question. Let's take them one at a time. Let's take rapists when their victim is drugged. Was it your intent that a rapist who had drugged his victim should be eligible for parole?
Well, let me start by saying, Senator, I worked for Governor Brown as a staff member, and so I worked to effectuate his policy goals. So did you disagree with him on Proposition 57? No,
Okay, well then let me ask you again. You played a leading role in this. If you want to disagree with it and say, hey, the governor was wrong and I was following orders, that's one thing. But if you're not going to say that, then I'm going to return to my question. Was it your intent? And let's take the first example I gave. Rapists who drugged their victims. Was it your intent that that rapist should be eligible for parole?
Governor Brown's intent was in complying with a federal court order.
Let me focus on your intent because you're the one nominated for a lifetime appointment to the Court of Appeals.
My intent was in serving the governor's policy, vision, and goals. And the overall purpose of the law was to respond to a federal court order that had been affirmed by the U.S. Supreme Court.
So let me try it again. Let's ask a different question. How about human sex traffickers? Was it your intention, as one of the leading drafters, that human sex traffickers should be eligible for parole?
The intent of the law was to provide parole consideration for nonviolent offenders as defined by existing California Penal Code.
Do you dispute that human sex traffickers would be eligible for parole under it?
If whatever crime was defined as nonviolent but under the California Penal Code.
Would human sex traffickers qualify, yes or no?
I believe sex trafficking, I would reference the California Penal Code to determine whether that was a violent or a nonviolent category of crime.
All right, how about those who have committed hate crimes?
As I sit here today, I'm not aware in which side hate crimes fall under. There can be circumstances
So you didn't spend a lot of time focused on that question?
No, what I would say is that with any of these categories, I would follow California, or what we did was follow California Penal Code as to define who was a violent or nonviolent offender.
So several reports indicate that violent criminals have been subject to parole. Likely criminals that the unsuspecting public did not intend on releasing when they passed Proposition 57. Sex offenders, gang members, batterers of police officers have been made subject to parole. As a result of your direct efforts, violent criminals were paroled. and California was made less safe. I guess my question is, did you intend for violent criminals to be released early? Or were you simply unaware of the consequences of your action? Which one was it? Did you know what you were doing, or did you not know what you were doing?
Thank you, Senator. The intention of the law was to comply with that federal court order, and the choice that Governor Brown faced was
I'm not asking about the governor. The governor has not been nominated to the Ninth Circuit. You have. So I'm interested in a litigant who would appear before you, who might very well be troubled about a judge who is soft on crime, who wants violent criminals, who is fine with violent criminals being released early. That would trouble a great many litigants. I think that would trouble a great many Californians who believed that this proposition was not affecting violent criminals when in fact it was. And so my question is what was your intention, not Governor Brown's, not anybody else, your intention, and were you aware of what you were doing? Did you know violent criminals would be released early when you were helping lead the efforts to pass this proposition?
As I mentioned earlier, the law, the choice that was faced was between allowing federal courts to order the outright releases of prisoners without any sort of rehabilitation efforts, or to create a system of parole consideration and sentencing credits to address an order that the United States Supreme Court had affirmed. And in the governor,
my time has expired, but let me just try one final time. Were you aware violent criminals would be released early under this? Yes or no?
Senator, we were aware at the governor's direction that it would affect the entire population of the prison system, hopefully to get people to rehabilitate and to improve their lives before.
That sounds like a yes. Thank you.
Senator